So thank you very much for your patience. And we would like to continue the second panel of today. The third panel of today, because we already had panel number 2. And we have a very interesting and very important, sorry, it's still panel 2. It's a very important roundtable discussion called Managing Competition in Light of Transparent Environmental Impact. This is going to be a roundtable discussion. I would like to give we have 4 great experts today. First of all, I'd like to introduce Matthias Lang from the Bird law firm from Germany and the chair of Serial. A big applause for him. We also have Ivone Rocha, from a partner of Telles law firm from Portugal. And I would like to welcome also Branislava Lepotić. I hope I'm pronounced correctly. He's an energy lawyer and legal expert from Serbia. And finally, I'd like to introduce Professor Konstantinos Tsimaras, full professor of public law in the European University from Cyprus, and the president of CAOL in the Energy Law Association from Cyprus as well. Very welcome for him. And of course, we have this great panel moderated by Professor Peter Cameron. So I let the floor for you and have a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Is that okay? Good. I'm not sure if we need the microphone, but I'll use it just in case. So I'm very happy to be the moderator of this session. The title of this session, just to be clear, Managing Competition in the Light of Transparent Environmental Impacts. All right, and we've got here a round table, and Professor Sushi has already introduced all the panelists, so we can get on with the business immediately. And I think that it would be best if we maybe kick off with an overview of a number of different issues that are relevant to this topic. So if I can call on Dr. Matthias Lang to give us this overview. I hope that doesn't come as a surprise to you. No, good. No. So Matthias, please give us an overview and keep it very lively, because it's coming on towards the end of the afternoon. So I don't want anybody falling asleep or getting tired, and so be as stimulating as possible, as usual.
Thank you so much, Peter. Yes, clean energy and AI, and you mentioned the subject, managing competition in light of transparent environmental impacts. That's actually quite a mouthful to start off with. Maybe I'll start, even though we've already heard quite a few fascinating things, start with a simple thing, the data center at the core of AI. Data center sounds a lot more pragmatic than the cloud. The cloud always sounds fluffy and not so physical, and nobody thinks of environmental impacts of clouds. You say, oh, maybe it's rain, but that's about it. But data centers actually are different. And just to get a feeling, who of you has been to a big data center? 1, 2, 3. So there's just a few. I think most of you would not recognize a big data center. When you drive around, many of the big data centers just look like big commercial buildings, and they have names on the side that are not Google, not Amazon, not even AWS. They have all sorts of names that most people don't know, and you wouldn't recognize them. What you would see is an industrial building or commercial building, with a fence around it, with chimneys, with cooling equipment on top, and the rest you don't see. You may actually see, if you really one of those die-hard electricity people, you might actually see transformer stations sitting somewhere, depending how big they are. Because data centers really are sort of a physical facility where the servers live, the actual storage system, lots of hard disks, networking equipment, which doesn't take much room, but then the power supply, backup power, environmental controls, and in particular the cooling piece, which takes a lot of power. So that's sort of, when we look at the physical buildings, we start to realize what potential impacts we can have from data centers. And just since we're talking about energy and renewable energy, who has an idea what percentage of the operating cost of a data center is electricity? Is it more in the range of 10%, 30%, 50, or 70? Yes?
70.
I'm sorry?
70.
Well, 70, that's one that has high costs, but depends on the data center, depends on the age, but I suppose it's somewhere between 30 and 70. So the electricity part, the power part, the part that you actually don't see in the data center, is enormously relevant for the impact. So once we've established that, it's very easy. Data centers use power, and AI data centers consume even more power. The exact figure how much more they consume is unclear, and it's probably difficult to calculate. But sort of who has an idea of what range are we talking about? Is it like twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times, or 10 times? Yes?
It's probably between 2 and 4 times more per unit of space.
Yeah. The calculation is difficult. Sometimes you read, and I was at a data center conference in Cannes, and then they talked about up to 10 times, depending on what you include in the actual search. So if you just look at, okay, how is a normal Google search uses X, and the AI search uses Y, and then it depends, of course, what you calculate into the development of the large language model, you know, or the reading of the internet. So really, the increase in data consumption is enormous. And that leads to the fact that we have, and again, nobody quite knows, I think Goldman Sachs has this figure that the global power demand from data centers to increase by 50% by 2027 and 165 by 2030. So that's just around the corner. So we are talking about huge quantities and quite a lot of room for environmental impact and competition effect when we just look at the sheer development that is coming up. Now, how do we look at the competition elements and the environmental impact parts? One is, of course, looking at the actual power generation part. Someone has to produce the power, and at the right time. Data centers have a habit of not being used most when the sun is shining, so there is quite a lot of power generation around the clock, so someone needs to do that. So we need to find a way, if we want that consumption, to deal with the intermittency from renewables, to actually make sure that it works. And then we need to make sure that the power, once someone has generated it, actually gets to the data center. So I think everywhere where I've worked at data centers, grid connection capacity was the other big limiting factor now on building data centers. So we have the normal grid supply part, and when we just look at the competition element, we all know that renewable energy have already put a strain on the grid, that in many areas, grid is the limiting part just to connect the wind farms, the solar parks. And now we have battery storage systems also competing for scarce capacity in grids. So there is quite a lot of room for competition for the scarce elements, and I think we have later a presentation also. It differs from country to country how much strain we have, but I think that's a relevant part that people need to deal with. So that's the normal grid supply part. One thing I just want to briefly mention is obviously the power use efficiency part, the environmental impact, and the power and competition impact depends on how much power the data center actually uses, and this power usage efficiency is a metric for measuring data centers' energy efficiency. So you divide the power that you have by the IT equipment part, and the rest is for other services. And there is also a European initiative on reducing the PUE for new data centers. So that's one part. One thing I also want to mention, because people don't usually think about it and the potential impact, that is the backup power. You have a data center. Are we talking about hundreds of megawatts? Are we talking about gigawatts? The big data centers now, we're talking about hundreds of gigawatts. They need full backup power. So they need the full capacity from a normal power station from the grid plus full backup. I think in most areas, it's diesel generators. Hardly anybody realizes how much backup generation capacity is sitting around the areas where the data centers are. It's huge. Normally, they don't run. If the grid is working well, they run like an hour a year. But if they do, they must run. And the question is for how long? And it's not so easy because the permitting systems in most countries were not really designed for huge backup generation capacity that only runs an hour a year, or maybe if things really go wrong, 24, 48 hours. So it's another part, because those diesel generators obviously are not full-fledged power stations with all the scrubbers. So there's room again on the environmental impact associated with this. And before I come to kind of another last aspect that I want to mention in this introductory piece is the regional competition part. We have historically looked at, well, we have not looked at the international competitive impact of having data center and AI capacity available. When you look at who are the players currently in the world, obviously we have the US, and they have lots of data center capacity. We have China in data center capacity, and we have Europe. And when you look at it, the US has 4 times, almost 5 times the data center capacity compared to Europe, and China has about 3 times as much. And obviously, we see where things are at the moment, and when we look at these developments, this is a very relevant factor where the AI development across Europe is going to go. Are we going to manage, or will we be able to get the power to the data centers here in Europe that can do it, or will we let the work be done in the US or in China or wherever else, but someone has to do it. So that's just a couple of initial thoughts on managing competition in light of transparent environmental impacts. There is a lot more to it that initially meets the eye. And there, I think, are very important challenges that we have to find solutions to in the EFELA member countries individually and across Europe, so that we can get our energy demand, our energy generation, and our AI needs going forward organized in such a way that it's beneficial for everyone. So I think that's just my brief overview. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Thank you very much. That's very helpful and a good way of starting. The ball is now rolling. and it's rolling in the direction of you, Ivone. So maybe you can follow up. You can either stand over there, or you can sit down, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Well, thank you, Peter, for the moderations. Thank you to the university and to Robert for the invitation and also for the organization of this conference. Very important, because the relationship between AI and energy is very important, as Matthias just demonstrated with important fingers. And this is also a very quite important moment. On my side, what I want to do here today is to share the issues and the experience in order to help to develop data centers. We don't have special rules. We don't have a uniformized approach, so we should learn by doing, and in a continuous dialogue between the law and the practice and the case. Effective as the last species about AI and energy, AI is essential for our development and nowadays. And the relationship between AI and energy is positive and negative, because we need AI to manage the energy, to promote energy efficiency, to better manage the grid. But the development of AI, as it is a very high energy consumers, demands problems on the management of the grid, and also on the energy supply. So when we talk about the limits of AI, one of them is the energy one, because our brain is not so faster, but it spends less energy than AI. So when we need to develop AI, we should consider the energy consumption, but also the energy security, because a data center needs a continuous, the capacity that it needs should be permanent. And this is very, very important. So when we develop a data center, we can look for the environment impacts, of course. We can look for to license, but we can much be very careful to manage how to get the necessary energy, and also how to develop backups, because security of the supply is essential. A data center doesn't stop and doesn't have holidays. It is a continuous operation. So on an energy supply point of view, we can find some dispute between the source of energy. We saw some diesel backups, as Matthias said, but this is not sustainable compatible. We need to be and to use clean energy, storage, but also small nuclear plants of new generation, but also green gas, but also natural gas. We should find all this kind of resource. But we live at this stage with different regulations because, for instance, in Portugal, we are not allowed to use small nuclear plants because our energy mix does not allow the nuclear. So even in the source of energy, we have different approaches of what is clean energy, and we have different approaches of what kind of backups we are able to do. But the more pressure is on the grid connection and how to get capacity. In a small country like Portugal, this is very important because our grid has less offer than the demand. We have not our grid. We have not capacity of the grid, and when we look for a data center, we should be in mind that it is not an industrial activity. So a data center could not be a benefit of the intensive electric consumer status. It could help in order to get grid connection, it could help in order to do more decentralized productions, and what could help to do by doing direct PPIs. A data center, as it is not an industrial activity, it should demand for the grid capacity as other service. And this is an important issue to care when we develop a project like a data center. Some countries, and Portugal is one of them, create the height demand zones, which are special regulate, and they open an auction in order to give consumption capacity to the ones who need. But in this kind of high demand zones, a data center needs all the capacity that is open, and it's impossible to give all the capacity to one. So this demands a very hard problem to resolve. And as we don't have any special rules, as our grid operation is not prepared to leading with this kind of project, it takes time, and we should be creative in order to find solutions. Private connections could be one of them, but we always need to go to the public grid because it can't fail, and we need always security. And try to find a place where we have grid capacity, which is very, very, very hard. So if you ask me what I think is the biggest problem to get to develop a data center, my answer is immediately grid connections, because it's very hard to get it. But if we look around the European Union countries, we have several different approaches on it. For example, Portugal is different than Spain, and I'm sure that Spain is different than Germany, and so on. And in a sector that it is very, very important to the future, and look at the examples that Matthias told us between USA and China. European Union should be attractive of this kind of project because the future needs AI. Data centers are very important, and we should create a competitive, friendly framework in order to develop them. Of course, in sustainability, but also with security supply. Peter Cameron, on his speech, talked about stop to think. We should demand to the energy law. And EFELA talk about the role of and the importance of the discussions around this subjects. So I think that the data center are the right subject to promote these discussions, because we need to develop them, and we need to create a competitive environment to develop them in Europe and in the European Union countries. So, taking this in consideration, our energy law should look to them also, should take care of them also, and should take care of new questions around the management of the energy supply. The European Union have leading along these last years on liberalization of the energy. Now we should rethink how to organize energy in order to what should be the system service, how to manage the distribution and the grid capacity. How does it take care of data center? For example, why data centers are not look as electro-intensive consumers like other industries. It allows that with the same approach, the several countries could develop them, and so on. And I think that we should promote a long and intensive dialogue between the science, the ones who develops the data centers, and the ones who needs to develop it, and the academic, in order to find some guidelines, because it's urgent to get the fingers of the USA and China. Europe is losing it's in the beginning comparing with those countries, and the new approach of the energy governments on for a sustainable world and a complex world, and for projects like this, should be a permanent dialogue between science and governance, between universities and players, in order to develop some guidelines on it. And particularly EFELA could have an important role on promoting this dialogue, and this conference today is a good example of it. This is my remarks for someone who developed a data center, is trying to develop another one, and it's very hard to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivone. Thank you very much, drawing on all your extensive practical experience from the Portuguese context. It's very helpful. I think we can just move straight on to Branislava now, who will give us a perspective from her own legal experience and in the southeast part of Europe. Branislava, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Robert and Vicente and Marinella and EFELA for invitation to take part in this conference. It is always important and interesting experience when I'm here together with you. When we are talking about data centers in Serbia and in Western Balkans, we do not have specific regulation for data centers and intensive energy consumers. However, there are legal, technical, and commercial considerations. I think that there is not only a question about data centers as intensive energy consumers. The question is about network utilization from these specific intensive energy consumers. Data centers are unpredictably variable load-intensive energy consumers, where load variation happens in wide and long range. That is a huge challenge for the electricity grid. It is not only about the consumption, it is also about connection to the grid, as we already heard from previous speakers, grid capacities, and network usage. How to secure connection for data centers and not ruin the network stability and available capacity to other customers? Beyond sheer volumes, data centers prefer renewable electricity or carbon-neutral electricity. Carbon-neutral electricity comes in various forms: intermittent wind energy, variable solar power, or strictly base load nuclear power. Nothing of that responds to variability of electricity demand of data centers. There is a need for grid resources to ensure security of supply of data centers, which was also mentioned as a very, very important moment. And data centers are unpredictably variable, load-intensive energy consumers when load variations happens in wide load range. Therefore, data centers need to exploit capabilities of relatively complex grid that covers large geographical area and that is supplied by the well-diversified power generation portfolio. That is like in my country. In some countries there are some smaller grid, as we discussed previously. Such grid need to be well connected. In other words, grid transmission capacity needs to be many times larger than power generation capacity attached to it. Therefore, capacity utilization rate needs to be small, and grid services are likely to become very expensive. Serbia is a very good example. Serbia and Western Balkans is one of the largest hydropower resources in Europe. It is based on some of the largest accumulation lakes in Europe. That includes the largest hydropower station in Europe at Iron Gates on the river Danube, where I live. These capacities are available to respond to stability, security, and variability requirements of the European power system. There is a scenario in which Serbia could become one of the most interesting places for location of computer centers. Hydropower flexibility could be redirected from the Europe grid to serve computer centers. My question is, what is opportunity cost of that? In very short, my argument is that computer centers need to be served by dedicated power generation and not to exploit grid resources that intended for other customers. We need a standard of fair usage rules to apply. I think usage of grid. It is entirely legal issue to safeguard grid resources from free-riding desires of any of those producers or customers connected to the grid. This legal issue goes beyond regulation. It affects the rule of law and basic human rights as well. It is also about property rights. We all know that engineers may come with all kinds of technical solutions to these issues. These solutions are focused to restrict consumption or production and compromise between various interests and needs. This is not a good direction. It is duty of the energy system to serve customers without restrictions for normal use of availability resources. Is it possible to serve data center off-grid by direct line to particular power plant? What are the technical capabilities of such power plant? Is there technical and economical solution for a power plant to serve data center without compromising right of other customers at grid and the grid stability altogether? These are critical questions. It is my opinion that legal profession have to stand on this issue and force engineers and economists to obey property rights, the rule of law and rights of customers to unobstruct energy supply. If we come back to managing competition on environmental impacts in the case of data centers, which we have today as our topic, there are a lot of levels of competition between data centers. Who is more efficient? Less energy intensive, more green, economically feasible, cheap for customers, available and reliable. At the same time, we need to think what we have seen in Spain and Portugal, what obstruction of security of supply delivers. And Vicente told us his yesterday experience and remind us about the role of the energy law and the importance of implementation of the energy law principle, security of the energy supply. Thank you.
Thank you, Branislava. And I thought we'd just go straight forward onto the next speaker, and then we can open the floor for discussion. So if you don't mind, Konstantinos, if you can take the floor or take the chair, stay there, that's fine if you want. Konstantinos Tsimaras, who is from Cyprus, and will be giving us a perspective based on that geographical location and his extensive experience of how things work there. Over to you, Konstantinos.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, I'm Greek from Greece, not from Cyprus, but I am teaching at the European University of Cyprus, so my time is half in, well, everywhere. In Cyprus, in Athens, now in Budapest, because I'm also the Vice President of the Greek Regulator of Energy, Water and Waste. So I would like to, before I will give you the approach of our regulator, I would like to thank Marinella, the soul of EFELA, for the organization, Rafael Lossi, the rector of the university, for hosting us, our dear colleague Robert, and also I have to say that I'm very happy to be here because this is a magnificent building, very beautiful building, and so I'm very happy to be here. So the question of data centers in the energy system. We have four or five questions about that. The first one, as Matthias already mentioned, the energy that we need for the data centers. We need an enormous number of megawatts for a data center. That means that we need a huge production of electricity, and the best idea is to have the production of the electricity next to the data center. So that means that we have to, the best solution, it will be to have an hotspot of renewable energy next to the data center, solar or wind. That can give us the necessary electricity for the data center. But the next question is the connection to the grid. And here we have two questions. The capacity of the grid, and also the time that for the license to be connected to the grid. Actually in Greece, for the time being, we have some problems concerning the time for the connection to the grid after the license. That can be 5, 6, 8, or 10 months. It's a lot of time. Secondly, the possibility, the capacity to be connected to the grid. The last months we have a problem concerning the production of electricity, especially from renewables, and they will have a lot of renewables cut off the system during the afternoon, because in the afternoon, especially from April to October, we have a huge production of solars. During summer, we have also a huge production of wind fields from renewables. So a lot of producers are cut off from the system during the afternoon. So we have also the problem to assure the stability of connection. Another question is the security of the connection. I mean, in case of a blackout, how a data center can continue to produce? We have the solution of the storage of electricity using batteries. Unfortunately, for the time being, the technology that we have, and it's essentially Chinese technology, because you know that the 90% of the production of batteries coming from China. So the technology that we have for the moment, it's maximum 3 or 4 hours of storage. We have some good news coming from the research. that tell us that soon we will have batteries for 9 or 10 hours. But for the time being, we have the solution of batteries for 3 or 4 hours. In case of a blackout for 1, 2, or 3 hours, we can save the system. In case of a blackout, like the blackout in Spain and Portugal a few months ago, it was, I think it was 24 or 48 hours. Well, in that case, we have to assure another solution, which is not easily to find it. Another question, the possibility of the data center owners to buy the energy from whom, the producer, and with which contract. If we use the actual tarification in the market, as a data center demands a huge electricity power, that can be buying the electricity from the market using the actual target model that we have in EU, that can be a difficult, affordable possibility. A very good idea is to have PPAs between the producers and the owner of the data centers that can give to the data center owners better prices for a period of 1, 2, or even 3 years. It's very important also the question of security. And I mean, I don't mean the security of the premises, data security, security from cyber attack. Because cyber attacks can come from another country, another from the private sector, we don't know from where, but it's essential to have a very sophisticated and a very good system of protection against cyber attacks. Another question is also the question of cooling the data centers. The data centers needs enormous quantity of water for cooling. For Southern Europe, due to the water scarcity, this is a difficult question. You know it very well in Portugal, we know it very well in Greece and Cyprus, in Italy also, in the southern part of France and Spain. So it is not very, very easy to find this quantity of water for the cooling system of the data center. One solution can be to use the water coming from after recyclage. I mean, it will be a very good solution and probably a cheap solution. Or use other liquids for cooling the data centers. So I believe that in a few minutes I give the more important topics of the question, and of course, if you need more information or questions, I am at your disposition. Thank you very much.
Well, on that happy note, there's an invitation to you to ask your questions. I hope you've still got some ideas kicking around in your heads at this late stage. This is the time to ask. We've got one there, one at the back. Any more? Just put your hand up so I can... 3. Okay, we'll get 3. That's good to start with, right? Well, let's... I think this gentleman here was first. So we go... here, and then Eva at the back, and then yourself. All right? So 1, 2, 3. Off you go. Do you need a microphone? We've got lots of microphones here. Lots of them.
Thank you very much for the interesting discussion. It's really a fascinating topic. as we all know, we have two types of data centers. Ones that are training AI, which are mostly based in the USA, and the others are the ones that are running the operations of AI, which are scattered around everywhere. And the question is, okay, the ones that are training AI, maybe their jobs is becoming less and less because they've already done that training, and retraining isn't going to take that much energy. And the ones that are running AI, the question I have is that, do we have any evidence that by the time as these training models become more clever, is it possible that they become even more efficient so that they consume less energy? Or do we have evidence to support this? Because I'm not technical with data centers in AI. Is it possible that they become more efficient in time, over time, and they consume less energy as a result?
Well, I think probably this is the wrong panel to answer the question. We should get some IT people. So as I'm just a simple lawyer, I can't really answer the question. It's just an observation that I've had. Is, well, yes, you need to do the training, but it seems to be that the training is never finished. There's always something new coming online, so you need to keep on training your systems. And I think it'd be something for an engineer or a computer person to answer. I think what we've seen in the past is, yes, there is an enormous amount of energy being used. Yes, the actual query probably takes less, but then it depends on how much data. So we don't really know, which is one of the key parts on what is the real need that we have for AI and data centers. I don't think anybody really knows. What we know is that the operators basically build what we give them. The limiting factor is power at the moment. And I mean, I've just had one thing on my desk, which is a 400 megawatt industrial site where the data center operator said, okay, yeah, there's 400 megawatts of grid capacity at that site. I think can I buy that site? And Matthias, while you're talking to the TSO, how much more can I get in what time? So I think that's where we are at the moment. I think the data center operators just work on the assumption that they just need more power. And they take what they can get. So based on that anecdotal evidence, it seems to be that they are not planning on this going down, and which takes us to one of the key problems, obviously, with all energy supply systems, is that all the predictions recently have been wrong. How much new capacity do we need? Who is going to consume what? When is the EV consumption going to kick in? So we don't know. So I think we just have to live with what we have. We need to build based on the plans. We make plans and we just revise the plans as we go forward. So I think it's not a good answer, but anecdotal evidence, it doesn't look like the data center operators, at least that we advise, are expecting a reduction.
To make things, okay, would you first? No. Okay. You go first. Okay. To make it more, to make it more, if I can say, interesting answer to your questions, even we are lawyers and try to observe it. But we need to understand where is the position of this data center, you know, in these energy cycles. Usually they are consumers, but they could be active customers, or they become something similar, you know, to produce electricity and back it to the grid. That means it is always different and depends on the real case. Additionally, in EU legislation, we are faced with energy efficiency principle first. We can expect that it will be implemented, and the engineer will always think about that with a new technology which is very, very fast developed. But something is more interesting. Every day, maybe our need for new data center will increase, and it should be somehow calculated. Thank you.
Just to complement, I think that the other side of your question could be that there should be sustainable requirements on the license, the data center, because nowadays it is possible to need less water, and because there are new systems, the design of the building could be more efficient. And for example, on the backup, which is very important, some of them use diesel, but we should ask for natural gas, which is better. And I agree that the sustainable requirements should be present on the license of this kind of projects. The problem is that they should be not so different between countries, because we need to create a competitive environment to develop them.
Okay, okay. I think we've done enough for that question. There could be a database bubble here, but anyway, we're going to move on to the next question right from the back. Eva.
So the online community can hear you.
Great. First off, I should just say thank you, because they're superb presentations, and it's really interesting to have experts from so many different places and leading in this area just on the same panel. My question was, Branislava, you mentioned direct lines and I suppose privately owned electricity lines. In Ireland at the moment, there's a framework being developed to support privately owned electricity lines. And one of the things that I suppose I wanted to ask the panel, collectively and individually maybe, is have privately owned electricity lines, direct wires or whatever you want to call them, have they alleviated any of the problems for data centers in your countries, member states? Has that been the experience?
Can you repeat the question more louder, please?
Okay, so Branislava, you mentioned direct lines, so privately owned electricity lines to connect demand to supply. Ireland at the moment is developing a framework for private lines. So I'm conscious that they have worked well in other jurisdictions. So I wanted to ask each of the panelists if they had alleviated problems for data centers in your particular country area. So I'm conscious that it could be, there's different experiences and different legislations, and just given that we have the expertise in the room, I was just curious. Thanks.
Okay, that's a question for
Here again. Okay. Well, I think the question of direct line depends very much on the grid architecture of the specific country, because a direct line only serves a specific purpose. So I have personally been working on a direct line, which I think to some degree is specific to the German energy landscape. The distribution system operators in regions, that we have 4 transmission system operators in the country and hundreds of distribution system operators. And they are more or less able to supply the demand in their areas. And Germany has an area, Frankfurt is an area with lots of data centers and lots of grid constraints. And outside of Frankfurt, there is still some capacity in the grid, even though it's served by the same transmission system operators. And there was a scarcity in a particular area where a data center operator then ended up building his own line to another distribution system operator outside of Frankfurt to connect into that grid where there was still capacity. So that is one way just to deal with the sort of the specific situations. A direct line needs someone who can supply the grid, the power, and does it. I mean, it only works if really that supplier has the power and doesn't want to sell it to someone else. And it usually is the consequence of the grid operator that is normally responsible not being able to provide the grid connection, I think, at the right time, at the right capacity. So it may serve a purpose, but I would think, but I'm seeing what others think, that ideally you don't have to build your own line because it's more efficient if you have a grid and people connect to the grid. But I'm open to experience in other countries.
Thank you, Ivo, for your question. Somehow in my country we transposed EU legislation regarding direct lines and we didn't develop anything new yet. But in the last 2 or maybe 3 years, we increased discussion in our, if I can say, professional society between, which is always multidisciplinary, between lawyers, economists, and engineers, and wrote a few papers about that, how it could be regulated, how it could be constructed, and how it could help that unpredictable, if I can say, future network user to support the networks and not just increase the network's capacity amazingly because of one consumer who is additionally unstable and can make this network more. And we analyze this for transmission line and also especially for distribution line, which is not always the same. But yes, we think that if these issues will increase how to, and it will be because it is a need of climate changes and everything, and development of the society, how to connect more renewables and how to use, to increase it, and how to somehow serve data centers, that this will be useful and we will need these regulations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It is also very hard to develop a direct line, and as Matthias said, in the environment point of view, it will be another problem. And in Portugal, all the lines are part of the public systems, which has got an operator to manage it. But so I think it's not the way. But your questions give me another perspective that which is already taken in consideration before. We could do decentralized productions for data centers, and in that case, of course, we are able to do a direct line, and as you have said, the productions of the renewable energy should be close of the data centers. We agree. And maybe it is possible to do a private connections to the productions, but this is not the same of the direct lines. And one of the benefits to get the electro-intensive consumer status is that with this status, at least in Portugal, we can do decentralized productions in more distance. For example, if we are not an electro-intensive consumer, and data centers are not, we only can produce our energy no more than 10 kilometers of distance. But if you become an electro-intensive consumer status, you can develop decentralized productions at any distance. And you can use the public grid to transport it, not to do direct lines. But if you have got, and this is a particular discussion, if it is possible to do private connections with some large-scale producers that are close to the data centers. I don't know if it is clear, but as a principle, direct lines I don't see as a solution, and in my country it is not possible.
Well, the general idea in EU is that we use the TSOs and the DSOs for the public network. So direct line, and I think you mean direct private line, it's something that we avoid to use it. Of course, we can have a data center next to a renewables hotspot or to a dam, and have the production of electricity near to the data center, but we're using the public system, the public connection system, which is administrated by the TSOs and the DSOs. Otherwise, we will have a possibility to have a lot of direct lines, and the system, it will be unstable. So, I can tell you that there was a similar idea a few months ago concerning the ports. There was an idea to have direct lines from renewables to the ports for the electricity consuming at the ports, especially the tourist ports with the big ships making cruises. And neither the port authorities or the ship owners were not very positive to the idea. So I can think probably a pilot program or using a regulatory sandbox for this question, but I'm afraid that in the future with direct lines we will have the public administrated grid administrated by TSOs and DSOs, and several direct lines. It will be a confusion concerning the administration of the system.
And I suppose it's a commercial question, and the economists are better at that when on the whole it's cheaper to run it through the grid than having a number of individual direct lines.
Well, thank you. Well, for economists as I am, this is a lot of fun. The energy policy of Europe is a fun. We are talking here, what is the backup power plant to computer center? It's a power plant directly connected to computer center, nothing else. Why then is not possible to have a power plant dedicated for computer center without any need for any other backup? One question. Secondly, you're sitting in Cyprus where plenty of electricity goes to water desalination. And there is a problem of cooling that data center, while you can, of course, do thermal desalination of water using that heat. Colleagues in Ireland, 21% of electricity goes to data centers. Great. How much heat from data centers goes to district heating of the country which use fossil fuels for residential and building heating? Almost nothing. If you look carefully, what is the consequence of energy policy? We are talking illusions. We are talking hydrogen. We are talking hydrogen-ready gas-fired power plants to make it more expensive, less flexible, more difficult, unsuitable for computer center. We don't have any energy policy, how to use waste heat from a data center in a productive way. We don't have a policy today which is going to make a good expectation of energy security in Europe for a period of next 10 years. I'm sorry to say. But if you look at Ireland, which is quite advanced country in terms of energy planning, etc., and then you see an idea that energy security is going to be ensured by 4 million cubic meters hydrogen storage. Wow! This is more than all hydrogen storage in the world today. I'm sorry to say that computer center developer is facing an enormously difficult question when he take a look not only of the grid, if he take a look of the energy policy. Energy policy doesn't support this economic development. I'm sorry to say that.
Good, good. Well, that's the first real intervention we've had this afternoon. It's not so much a question, but it's. I just wonder, do you want to make any quick responses to the this extensive intervention?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the well, I will not say if I agree or not with your approach concerning the energy policy of Europe. As you know, the decisions are taken in Brussels, and the regulators, speaking as a regulator, are following these decisions. First of all, concerning the desalination units, it's too expensive, consumes a lot of energy, and you have an enormous problem concerning the environmental questions about the salt. You have to, what you will do with the salt after the desalination. There are solutions. We use it in Greek islands, in Italian islands, in Sardinia, in etc. We use desalination units, especially for potable water, because you have to go give to the people water to drink. But it is not the best solution. Of course, it is a solution. Concerning the existence of the production of power next or in the data centers. Well, yes, there is an idea, but the idea is that any industrial, anyone who needs energy in not in a private scale, but concerning the enterprises, has to be connected to the grid. I mean, why give to the data centers the possibility to produce their own energy and not to make the same for the industries, for the airports, for everyone? In that case, we will have a very decentralized system of production, and the question is how we can manage this system. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the idea is that we have a grid, we have a production of energy, either from electricity, gas, fossil oils, etc. We have the TSOs and the DSOs who are responsible for the grid, and everyone, an apartment, a restaurant, or an industry has to be connected to the grid. So this is the idea. If we will start to give exceptions, where we are going to stop the exceptions? Well, leave the floor for the others.
Yes. Well, I've a positive perspective, because I don't think that climate change is an illusion. It's really, and we should living and fighting. The energy policy and European energy policy was developed taking into consideration the remove of barriers in order to liberalization and also in climate change targets in an isolated perspective. Now we demand more because we need to discuss what kind of service should we guarantee and what kind of service we should approach in an integrated way. I give you an example. We have roads, and in the roads we have cards. And it's clear for everybody which are the priority cards, which kind of cars could pass on the road. The grid is the same thing. It's the road for energy. We must pay to pass, and all the energy that we need should go to the grid. And the management of it's absolutely necessary. The demand of data center is that in some cases they need all the grid capacity that in that local, and the balance between why this data center and why not those one, why this data center and why not those energy. This is absolutely necessary and should be a demand to the operator manager. So, of course, I agree that we should rethink. It's the moment to rethink, but with a positive approach, because climate change is not an illusion.
Thank you, Ivone. Well, yes, maybe I have not fully understood some parts of it. The backup generators for data centers, they are obviously directly connected to the data center because they need to run when the grid is down. So that's actually why we have the diesel generators in the data center. But they're even so closely located that they are on the same property. So that's I think, not an issue, and I think there's no discussion. Conceptually, I think a data center operator is free to build his own power plant, as everybody is. I can build a power plant in Germany if I want to. I just apply for grid connection, I build power, and I can do that. The question is commercially, when is it commercially viable? I think that's one part. And then whether there's always this discussion, if we have new grid gas turbines, do they have to be hydrogen ready or yet not? Technically, they don't exist. None of the suppliers at the moment can build big hydrogen generators because there's no gas, there's no grid for hydrogen that actually supports big turbines. So yes, this is a conceptual thing that has been floating around, but we neither have the hydrogen nor we have the hydrogen backbone at the moment. I think this is something that is being built in some countries, so we'll see if it works eventually.
It's a delusion, as I said.
Well, let's see if it's a delusion. I've been around the energy world for a while, and like 4 years ago, people told me is a delusion that battery storage will work at scale, and now it does. And I worked on solar parks where the feed-in tariff was 53 cents per kilowatt hour. So I'm just a lawyer. I don't know what will work when. So I don't. So I've seen so many strange and wonderful things happen. And in terms of the last part, the using waste heat. So again, Germany is a rather cold country, so maybe different in Cyprus and Greece. But we've actually worked on pilot projects to do that, to use the waste heat from data centers for heating apartment buildings and offices. Obviously, the problem is that you have most waste heat in summer when the demand for power, for heating is fairly low. And we have physical challenges in district heating systems, that the district heating system, at least in Germany, the most district heating systems were originally set up with temperatures that are much higher than what you get from the cooling systems in the data center. So you actually then have to use heat pumps to bring it up, which again loses power. So I know, and I have the pleasure of having drafted a couple of the initial agreements on that. People are trying it out, and I think the biggest jury is the market jury. Is it going to work commercially? So there again, I have no idea if it's going to work. For the lawyer, advising lawyer, it has worked because we got paid. But if it's going to work in the long run, I don't know yet. And I think the key challenge is to come up with flexible regulatory frameworks that allow, as you mentioned, some sandboxing at the beginning, and then see how the market plays out. So maybe that's a bit of a answer with several legs. I don't know if it helps. Thank you, Matthias.
Okay, and I just want to say 2 or 3 sentences about all this discussion, which is very, very interesting for me. Most of us here are energy lawyers. And the energy law is, if I can say, young legal science, which is always developed. We can't talk about the dogmas. Yesterday, in my country, which is, I can't say very developed country, and we are slightly running for EU regarding legislation, we discussed can data center could be active customer. That means there are many, many solutions also in this new EU legal framework, but in practice, we can't imagine what it could be. As Matthias said, there are also economical elements which will prevail. Can somebody will do something or not, but I think that law can't be the border for that. The law is here to open possible solutions for development. That is from my side.
Thank you to the panel. That was a great session, and I'm now going to bring it all to an end, except not today, because we've got a little bit more. I'm going to hand the floor over now to Robert, and I think we can all leave the panel.
Leave the microphone.
We've done our job, so thank you very much.